Do I have vestibule in this lab?
Lights?
It's a space where you put your chew. Okay. Between the lips and the gums. I don't know if that is in here. And the pharynx shows up reasonably nicely on here.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Yeah, much better. Thanks. Okay. Nasopharynx, which we asked in lab. Oral pharynx, laryngeal pharynx. I forgot to put canines in here. I'm not real big on teeth. Is anybody in here plan to go into dental hygiene? Okay. So, but there they are, pretty easy too. Central incisors for cutting, lateral incisors for cutting, canines, bicuspids, there are 2 of them, premolars, tricuspids, there are 3 of them, molars. The uvula, tongue, frenulum, soft palate, and hard palate. That's the uvula. A frenulum is found on the midline, and it often kind of helps hold 2 structures together, sort of a leftover from embryonic growth, probably. That under your tongue, right there. And there's a little one right there. We have them all over our body on the midline. The plural is frenula. Okay, so that was most of the ones on there. Soft palate, tongue, hard palate. You guys know what those are, don't you? Okay. So the salivary glands show up nicely on the models. The parotid salivary gland, very large, sits superficially to the masseter muscle. You can palpate it just anterior to the ear, and the largest of the salivary glands secretes its product into this long tube called the Stenson's duct, which opens into the oral cavity. The next largest one is called the submandibular gland, and it secretes saliva through the Wharton's duct. I know if I have my mouth open at the dentist, I often squirt a bunch of saliva out. I'm pretty deadly, so I wonder if I'm the only one that does that. Then there's one right under the tongue called the sublingual gland, which there's no tube. It just secretes through a bunch of little tubes right into the space under the tongue. Okay, so and they are bilateral on both sides. So that's fairly important anatomy. Okay, the esophagus connects the oral cavity with the stomach. There's a big bolus of food passing down the esophagus. The food is carried down by peristaltic contractions, which we'll talk about. Very often we introduce the lab with the lecture. This time we're introducing, this is next Monday's topic, because we'll be talking about a lot of this. So we're introducing the lecture with the lab. The esophagus, okay. There it is. The esophagus passes through the diaphragm, through the esophageal hiatus. Shows up nicely on our torso. There's a big, this person did an upper GI, which means you drink the barium. And this is a rather strange looking esophagus until you take the MRI and see that there's a monster tumor right there. And these esophageal cancers almost always metastasize to the liver, which is right there. This is, I said we're going to be talking about a lot of sphincters, circular muscular valves, throughout the rest of the quarter. This is the cardiac sphincter, named because it's very close to the heart, It controls the flow of fluid or of food into the stomach, and you don't want it to be open except when food is passing into the stomach. Otherwise, you'll get gastric reflux up into the esophagus, okay, and all the associated problems with that. So this is one of my students had this done. Interestingly, oh, that's a gastroenterologist in Klamath Falls. Okay, so the cardiac sphincter, sometimes called the cardia, the various parts of the stomach, the fundus, the body, the pylorus, and the pyloric sphincter controls gastric emptying. When it opens, food leaves the stomach. The greater curvature of their stomach, the lesser curvature, and we'll talk about the greater omentum as a membrane that attaches to the stomach. So here we see the lesser curvature, the greater curvature. This is the cardiac sphincter up here in the esophagus. This is the pyloric sphincter. So you can see that nothing's getting through there unless it's liquid. So only liquid leaves the stomach. So the stomach, if you didn't chew your food very well, you leave a lot of work for your stomach to do because it has to convert its contents into a liquid. So, hope our Coos Bay people left. Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
Good. Okay, so one of the main functions of the stomach is that we can eat a whole bunch in one sitting, and we don't have to snack a whole lot, do a bunch of little snacks. People who lose their stomach just eat little bits all day long. The stomach completes mechanical digestion and begins chemical digestion, and we'll talk about what that means. Okay, the entire digestive system contains two layers of muscle, a longitudinal layer and a circular layer, except for the stomach, which has 3 layers, and that tells you something about the stomach. Okay, it does a lot of work, and imagine turning a steak into a liquid. Okay, so a lot of changes have to happen, and it makes you want to chew your food a little better. Okay, the rugae are the little there's a corrugated surface on the inner lining of the stomach called rugae, and there's the 3 layers, longitudinal, circular, and oblique. And I don't have any model that shows that. I would have to use a picture to show that. And the fundus is this part up here. The pylorus, this is the body. The pylorus is that region down there, and the pyloric sphincter. Okay. This is the duodenal bulb right there, which is the first part of the small bowel. Small bowel is where lots of stuff happens. We complete chemical digestion and absorption in the small bowel. There's about 20 feet long. Okay, here's the person did an upper GI, and there's most of the barium has left, but you can see a little bit up in the fundus of the stomach, and right there you can see where the cardiac sphincter must be. And this is the duodenal bulb, and the duodenum loops around the head of the pancreas. So you can see it's only partly filled, and all the barium has either gone further downstream or it's all up here. If this is all there is, they didn't give enough. Okay, the pyloric sphincter, very powerful valve, controls gastric emptying. The omentum attaches mostly to the stomach, liver on the right, spleen on the left. The omentum just drapes over the bowels, kind of like a little apron. Okay, and you see a nice view of colon, and this is where the small bowel attaches to the colon right there. We have our 20 feet of small bowel, and that little thing that's all wrinkled up there is the appendix. Okay? So, our hierarchy of convolution. The reason why the inner lining of the small bowel is so convoluted is to maximize surface area for the purpose of absorption. Okay, and so we have the duodenal bulb. The duodenum is about 1 foot long. The middle part of the small bowel is the jejunum, which is maybe 8 feet long, and the remainder is the ileum. The mesentery is a membrane that suspends the bowel in the peritoneal cavity. You don't want the bowel just settling all down to the bottom. It's hung in layers. This mesentery is kind of like pages in a book, and loops of small bowel run through various of the pages, and the mesenteric arteries run through the mesentery. Okay, and the mesentery is actually histologically part of the bowel. The ileocecal valve is a valve that connects the small bowel to the colon, and its purpose is to prevent the contents of the colon, which contain numerous bacteria, all mostly good bacteria, from backing up. We don't want bacteria in the small bowel helping us to digest our food. Okay, so you can see the surface area of the small bowel. It is profound. Okay, and there's, I don't know why I say small bowel, because this is colon. The distal small bowel is just right there. So this is where the small bowel, the distal ileum, okay, and the ileocecal valve would be right there. Okay, and you can see the mesentery that suspends both the colon and the small bowel, and you can see it's like pages in a book. I'm looking at a mid-sagittal slice, and we can see the transverse colon, the stomach, the liver, and the various loops of bowel suspended by the mesentery. Okay. So this is the ileocecal valve. This first part of the colon is the cecum, and there's a little orifice there that you can see opens into the appendix. Okay, so the colon is divided into little compartments called haustra. Okay, the appendix is actually the vermiform appendix. Vermiform means it looks like a worm. The cecum is the first part of the colon, ascending colon. Then there's a big kink that we call the hepatic flexure. Then the part that goes across the middle is the transverse colon, the splenic flexure on the spleen side. Then we have descending colon. Sigmoid colon is shaped like an S, returns to the center of the body. The rectum is the last part of the colon, and the anus. Okay, so cecum, ascending colon, hepatic flexure, transverse colon, splenic flexure, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anus. All suspended by a mesentery. And here a person has had a barium enema, not a very fun thing to have. But you see a nice outline of the sigmoid colon, descending colon, transverse colon. You can see the splenic flexure goes way up here. The hepatic flexure doesn't go up so high because the liver takes up so much room. Descending colon. This is my cecum, okay? Pretty good looking tissue. And this little hole, can anyone guess what this little hole empties into? The cecum is the first part of the colon. The appendix. Down in there is my appendix. So, this is when I had I've had 2 colonoscopies, something that everyone should do at a certain point. It's become a normal screening procedure anymore. They've gotten very good at it. The only thing that's not fun is the prep, which I can describe to you in private. The transverse colon has this characteristic triangular portion. See the haustral folds in there in the little compartments that characterize particularly the transverse colon. So the guy asked me, he said, he knew I taught A&P, he said, there's anything you'd like me to photograph in there? And I said, yeah, my ileocecal valve. So it took him about 5 minutes to find it, but there it is. So there's my ileocecal valve. There's the descending colon. Takes a lot of work to get it all nice and clean and shiny like that. Sort of a lost day out of your life. Okay, so here is some patient, not me, had a barium enema, and you can see the transverse colon and the various haustra. Okay. So the accessory digestive organs are the liver and the pancreas, and this comes right out of the stomach. And this is the duodenum, loops around the head of the pancreas, a little bit of gallbladder peeking out, inferior to the liver. And we see the falciform ligament divides the 2 lobes of the liver. And the round ligament is basically a fetal remnant. It used to be the umbilical vein that carried all the good stuff from the mom to the fetus. It connects directly to the umbilicus. And so there you can see the ligamentum teres, okay, and the falciform ligament. This is the left triangular ligament. The right triangular ligament is harder to see, but these 2 ligaments basically suspend the liver. The liver's hung partly from the diaphragm. And what's that peeking out?
The hilar region?
Gallbladder. Okay, so right lobe, left lobe, falciform ligament, the right and left triangular ligaments, and the various lobes that I'll point out to you. The hilar region of the liver is given a special name. It's called the porta hepatis, which means doorway to the liver. And it's where all the tubes go in and out. The ligamentum teres, and that's the one I want you to use, is the fetal remnant. Used to be these fetal blood vessels at the time of birth fill in with collagen and become ligaments. So. And every one of them has a story. If you remember, we did the heart dissection and we talked about the ligamentum arteriosum, used to be a blood vessel. Okay, so there's all the lobes and ligaments, and the backside. Here's the backside of the liver. We see the caudate lobe, the left lobe, the right lobe, and down here is the quadrate lobe, kind of like a square. The ligamentum teres. Here you see the gallbladder and the cystic duct. Okay. And there's a bunch of other duct work that carries bile that's hard to distinguish. Okay, and the liver is big. Okay, liver, what's that there? Gallbladder. Okay. And there's where all the liver tissue's been stripped away, and you can see all the vessels and tubes inside. The green ones are bile ducts. The red one carries arterial blood. Here we see the hepatic veins, which carry the good blood out of the top of the liver. The hepatic portal veins carry junky blood into the bottom of the liver. I don't see a good view of those here. Okay, and so this is all the anatomy surrounding the gallbladder. We'll learn the names of all these gallbladder words. Okay, common hepatic duct, cystic duct, common bile duct. The inner lining of the gallbladder is called the mucosa, the fundus of the gallbladder, sphincter of Oddi, and the ampulla of Vater. So here we see the mucosa and the fundus of that of the gallbladder is that little part you see peeking out underneath the liver. This is the cystic duct. This is the common hepatic duct. This is the common bile duct. And the common bile duct enters the pancreas. The pancreatic tissue's been removed, so you can see all the ducts. But it enters the pancreas, and there's a little reservoir in there called the ampulla of Vater. Okay? And this is the duodenum or duodenum, whatever you want to call it. And the pancreatic ducts carry really important enzymes which also drain into the ampulla of Vater. So the ampulla of Vater contains bile and pancreatic juices, very important digestive components. And here you see the ampulla of Vater and the sphincter of Oddi. When the sphincter of Oddi opens, the gallbladder contracts, ejecting its contents, and you get all this important digestive stuff entering the duodenum and mixing with the food that has just left the stomach. Okay, so the liver has been lifted up so we can see the gallbladder underneath, quadrate lobe, everything's upside down, caudate lobe, and the hepatic artery proper, and the right and left hepatic artery, and the cystic duct, and the hepatic duct, and the common bile duct. Okay, more of saying. Sphincter of Oddi, ampulla of Vater. Gallstones come in all different sizes. I'll try and remember to bring my little jar of gallstones. But in a particular person, they all seem to be the same size. We had a cadaver that was just stuffed full, and that's what happens. Generally, if you have them, you have a lot of them, and the gallbladder's just stuffed full of them. And it tends to be very painful when it gets that far. And of course, they get stuck in the common bile duct. And they have a procedure, an endoscopic procedure, where they can actually thread a catheter way down through your stomach and up through all of that, through the sphincter of Oddi, and grabs a stone out of the common bile duct, as opposed to cutting someone wide open. They also have laparoscopic procedures where they stick little tubes in. They hardly ever do surgeries where they cut through the abdominal muscles anymore. Very, very traumatic to do that. So, but notice they're all the same. And commonly, the person has to have their gallbladder removed. A laparoscopic cholecystectomy. They pull it out through a little hole. They make used to be 3 holes. They've got it down to 2 holes now. And they put in these endoscopes, and they've improved the technology to where they can get all this machinery on the end of these tubes. One tube is meant to put a basket or something around the gallbladder, and the other tube has a cutting tool and a TV camera and a light. And they do the cutting with one tube and pull the gallbladder out through the other orifice, and it's quite non-invasive compared with the old-fashioned laying the person wide open technique. Okay, and you can just tell pretty easy when a person's got gallstones. Gallstones are 90% cholesterol. They're quite fairly soft. So you can't shatter them with ultrasound like you can a kidney stone. Okay, so the pancreas consists of all these different parts, which we will learn. Okay, and so we've got the tail and the body and the head and the pancreatic duct. And my model shows the uncinate process very nicely. Pretty hard to capture a gallbladder in MRI on an MRI, but there we actually got pretty much the whole length of it. Pancreatic cancer is probably the most deadly cancer there is. I went to a seminar given by a radiologist once that said, he said that in the last 10 years or something, that out of all the pancreatic cancer patients he'd ever had, he was from Portland, not a one of them had ever lived more than about a couple of years. A friend of mine who retired with me, just when he retired, it's the way it always works, developed pancreatic cancer just after he bought my Camaro and was going to have all kinds of fun. Poor guy, and didn't live 6 months. So. Okay, so the gut is a perfectly legitimate biological term for the digestive system. Could be anything in a primitive animal, could just be a single tube, but in us, it's very elaborate, isn't it? And we're now going to talk about the vasculature of the gut, which we've talked about to some degree, but we're going to look at it in more detail now. Some of this is a review for you guys, and plus we'll add some vessels onto it, okay? Like we'll add the left and right gastroepiploic arteries and the pancreatico-duodenal arteries, and the right and left hepatic arteries, which are branches of the hepatic artery proper. But a lot of these you've seen before. Okay, and so all of those arise from the celiac trunk, which leaves the aorta, and in some folks is practically non-existent. In other folks might be an inch long. It trifurcates into the left gastric artery, which serves the left side of the lesser curvature. And we have the splenic artery and the common hepatic artery. And the common hepatic artery bifurcates into the hepatic artery proper and the gastroduodenal artery, which further bifurcates into the right gastroepiploic artery and the superior pancreatico-duodenal artery. Okay? And then over here, we have the right gastric artery, which serves the right side of the lesser curvature. The gastroepiploic arteries serve the greater curvature. The right gastroepiploic serves the right side. And coming off the splenic artery, we have the left gastroepiploic artery, which serves the left side of the greater curvature. Okay, and there they all are. That's not a bad picture, really, for the purpose of studying, to learn the words. This one isn't, it's kind of deadly. Don't look at it too hard. So is this one. Okay. Kind of fun to look at, just don't take it really seriously. So the next major vessel to leave the aorta is the superior mesenteric artery, which has all these branches, and many of them are new to us. Okay, and we'll look, in fact, they probably all are. But we have them all on models, amazingly, and so we'll look at all of them. The most important branches are the branches that go to the small bowel. The small bowel is completely served by the superior mesenteric artery, all 20 feet of small bowel. Okay, so there we see all the branches to the small bowel, which are numerous. A lot of blood flow in that artery. If one has a major wound to the abdominal region, very often you bleed out too quickly. like if it's a car accident or a gunshot wound or who knows what, it's common to bleed out really rapidly. Okay, and there's all the superior mesenteric structures. The superior mesenteric serves the small bowel and the right side of the colon, as well as the transverse colon, which is not well shown in this picture. Okay, there we see the superior mesenteric artery, and the middle colic artery serves the transverse colon. And there's a right and left branch of the middle colic artery, not shown well here. But we see also the right side of the colon and the cecum. Okay, the inferior mesenteric artery serves the left side of the colon and gives rise to only 3 major arteries, which are these. Okay, so our torso model embarrassingly doesn't show the inferior mesenteric artery. Our older torso model does. That's a grave mistake on their part. And here you see the left colic artery, and this is probably, well, this one gives rise to the sigmoid artery and the superior rectal artery. Okay, so there we see left colic artery, sigmoid artery, and somewhere down there is going to be the superior rectal artery. Okay, superior rectal artery, sigmoid artery, left colic artery. Okay, and remember the hepatic portal system? And there's really nothing to add to that. We've done all of that already. Very important. All the food we absorb, containing all the stuff of debatable benefit that we ate, goes to the liver, goes in the bottom side, and the liver removes all the bad stuff and adds good stuff, and the good blood comes out the top of the liver via the hepatic vein. Okay, so all the stuff, junky blood, and of course we managed to eat some good things too. The liver goes in the bottom of the liver via the hepatic portal vein, and the liver removes a lot of the glucose, a lot of the proteins and amino acids, and uses them to assemble plasma proteins, which is the liver then dumps back in the blood. The liver makes clotting proteins, it makes angiotensinogen, and all these other proteins that are so important. And then the good blood comes out the top of the liver via the hepatic veins and enters the inferior vena cava. And there it all is.